When dealing with a narcissist, especially an evil one, you have to understand that their entire world is built on illusion. They don't operate in truth. They construct a reality where they are always in control, always the victim when it suits them, and always the hero when they need admiration. They shape the narrative, bending facts, twisting emotions, and distorting everything around them to make themselves look powerful and untouchable. But there is one thing that terrifies them, one thing that shakes them to their very core: being seen for who they really are. When you look a narcissist in the eye and say, "I see right through you," you're doing something that no one else has dared to do. You're stripping away the carefully crafted masks they wear, and that is something they cannot handle. Their entire sense of self is built on deception, on making others believe the story they tell about themselves. They rely on confusion, on emotional fog, on making you second guess yourself so that you never stop to see the cracks in their performance. But the moment you make it clear that you see those cracks, that you see through the lies, through the manipulation, through the grand performance, that's the moment the power dynamic shifts. A narcissist survives on control, and their main weapon is making sure you doubt your own reality. They gaslight, they deflect, they play the victim, they create chaos, because if you're too busy questioning yourself, if you're too wrapped up in trying to make sense of their behavior, you don't have time to step back and see the bigger picture. You don't have time to recognize the patterns. You don't have time to realize, wait a second, this isn't normal, this isn't okay, and this isn't about me, this is about them. And here's the thing about a narcissist: they choose their victims very carefully. They don't go after just anyone. They seek out people with empathy, with compassion, with a deep desire to understand others. And that's what makes it so hard, because if you are someone who naturally wants to see the best in people, if you are someone who always tries to understand where others are coming from, a narcissist will use that against you. They will take your empathy and twist it into a tool they can use for control. They will test your boundaries little by little, seeing how much they can get away with, seeing how far they can push before you start to resist. And when you do start to resist, that's when they play their next card. That's when they make you feel guilty. That's when they suddenly become the victim. But the moment you say, "I see right through you," you are refusing to play the game. You are breaking the spell. And it terrifies them, because now they're exposed. Now they know you're on to them. Now they can't manipulate you the way they once did. And the reason this is so powerful is because narcissists live in constant fear of being found out. That's their biggest weakness. They don't actually believe in their own superiority the way they pretend to. Deep down, they know it's a lie. That's why they work so hard to convince others, because if they stop even for a second, the whole house of cards starts to shake. So when you stand your ground, make it clear that you see them for who they are, something shifts. They might lash out. They might try to pull you back in with guilt, with anger, with threats. They might try to flip the script and say, "You're the problem. You're the one who's toxic," but don't fall for it, because the moment they start scrambling, the moment they start trying to regain control with desperation instead of confidence, that's when you know they're scared. And here's the thing: you don't even have to say those exact words. It's not just about the phrase, "I see right through you." It's about the energy behind it. It's about how you carry yourself. It's about the way you stop reacting to their bait, the way you stop explaining yourself, the way you stop needing their approval, the way you stop playing by their rules. Because once you've seen through them, you can't unsee it. Once you know what they are, they can never control you the same way again. And that's their nightmare, because now they don't have power over you. Now you are no longer a pawn in their game. Now they have to face the one thing they fear more than anything: their own reflection. And that's something they can't handle. A narcissist's entire sense of self is built on control over how others see them, control over how the story unfolds, control over the emotions in the room. They need to be the one pulling the strings, dictating the narrative, deciding who gets to feel what and when. And that's why when you look at them and say, "You have no power over me," it sends a shockwave through their entire system. It's a sentence that shatters their illusion because it takes away the one thing they thought they always had, dominance over you. The reason narcissists are so good at keeping people trapped is that they don't come at you with outright force. If someone tried to control you in an obvious way, you'd resist. You'd recognize it for what it is. But narcissists are far more strategic. They use subtlety. They use charm. They use guilt, obligation, and fear. They wrap their control in something that looks like love, like care, like authority. They make you feel like their approval is necessary, like their validation is something you need. And they do it so well that over time, you start believing it. You start adjusting yourself to fit their expectations. You start walking on eggshells, second-guessing your own instincts, shrinking yourself down so you don't upset them. But the truth is, their power over you only exists if you let it. It only works if you believe in it. And the moment you realize that, the moment you fully step into the understanding that they don't actually control you, that's the moment everything changes. When you say, you have no power over me, it's not just words, it's a declaration. It's a shift in energy. It's a breaking of chains that maybe you didn't even realize you were wearing. Because it's not just about the words themselves, it's about what happens internally when you say them and mean them. A narcissist's power doesn't come from them being stronger or smarter or more capable than you. It comes from their ability to manipulate how you see yourself. They make you believe you're weaker than you are. They make you believe that without them, you'll fall apart. That without their approval, you have no worth. That if you push back, there will be consequences so severe, you won't be able to handle them. But here's what happens when you stand your ground and say, you have no power over me. They panic, they scramble, they look for new ways to pull you back in, to make you doubt yourself again. They might get angry, they might try to guilt you, they might play the victim, they might say, after everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me? Or you're being so cruel, so selfish, because they know exactly where to hit. They know the words that will trigger your guilt, your empathy, your fear. But when you refuse to react, when you let their words fall flat, when you don't engage, when you stay firm in the truth that they do not control you, something shifts. They start to realize that the strings they've been pulling are no longer attached. And that terrifies them. Because here's the thing about narcissists. They don't just want power, they need it. They feed off of it. It's how they survive. If they can't control you, then they don't know who they are anymore. If they can't get a reaction out of you, they start to unravel. And that's why they fear this sentence so much, because it means you've woken up. It means you see the game. It means they can't manipulate you the way they used to. And for them, that is unbearable. But for you, it's freedom. Because once you've said it, once you've stepped into the truth that they hold no real power over you, you can never go back. You can never unsee it. You can never be controlled in the same way again. And that is the moment you take your life back. A narcissist world is built on one thing, control. Not just any kind of control, but a specific kind, the kind that is subtle and insidious, the kind that doesn't come at you head on, but wraps around you slowly, tightening just enough so that you don't notice until it's already taken hold. They don't just want to manipulate. They want you to participate in your own manipulation. They want you to argue, to defend yourself, to explain why you're upset. They want you emotionally invested in every little interaction because that's where they get their power. And that's why when you stand your ground and say, I won't play your game, it sends them into a tailspin. Because that's what it is, a game. And they've spent their entire life perfecting it. They know how to twist your words, how to push your buttons, how to set traps that make you react in exactly the way they need you to. They throw out accusations, knowing you'll rush to defend yourself. They play the victim, knowing you'll feel guilty. They poke at your insecurities, knowing you'll scramble to prove them wrong. And while you're doing all of that, while you're trying to explain, trying to clarify, trying to make them understand, they're sitting back, watching, enjoying the fact that they still have control over you. Because as long as you're engaging, they're winning. And that's why this sentence is so powerful. I won't play your game. It's not an insult. It's not an argument, it's a refusal. A refusal to step onto their battlefield. A refusal to give them the reaction they're looking for. A refusal to hand them the power they so desperately need. A narcissist doesn't just fear losing control, they fear irrelevance. And when you stop playing, they lose both, because now they have nothing to work with. No fuel, no reaction, no emotional response to feed off of. And that's when they start scrambling. That's when they start throwing out bigger accusations, bigger manipulations, trying anything to pull you back in. Because if there's one thing a narcissist cannot handle, it's being ignored. And I want to be clear here, this doesn't mean you won't feel the urge to respond. It doesn't mean you won't want to defend yourself, to correct their lies, to finally get them to understand the truth. That's the hardest part, because they are masters at creating just enough doubt, just enough confusion to make you think that if you just said the right thing, if you just explained it a little better, maybe, just maybe, they'd finally get it. But they won't. They never will, because they're not looking for understanding. They're looking for control. And the moment you recognize that, the moment you see the pattern for what it is, you take away their biggest weapon. So when you say, I won't play your game, you are doing more than just setting a boundary. You are taking back every piece of yourself that they tried to claim. You are choosing peace over chaos, truth over illusion, self-respect over endless cycles of frustration. You are saying with absolute certainty, you don't get to control this anymore. You don't get to control me. And that's a game they will never win. There's something about boundaries that terrifies a narcissist, not just because they don't like rules, not just because they think they're above them, but because boundaries mean one thing: limits. And narcissists don't do limits. They survive by pushing, by testing, by seeing how much they can get away with before you push back. They are experts at finding the cracks in your self-worth, the places where you hesitate, where you're unsure, where you wonder if maybe you're the one who's overreacting. They poke and prod until they find the weakness, and then they push just a little at first, then a little more, then a little more, until one day you realize you don't even recognize yourself anymore. But when you stop and say your behavior is unacceptable, everything changes. Because in that moment, you are doing something they never expected. You are drawing a line in the sand. You are naming the problem. You are refusing to accept what you once tolerated. And for a narcissist, that is terrifying, because their power doesn't come from being strong. It comes from making you feel weak. It comes from making you feel like you don't have the right to say no. And the moment you say it, the moment you look them in the eye and say, without apology, your behavior is unacceptable, you become the thing they fear most. You become someone they can no longer manipulate. Because here's the truth: narcissists don't actually expect to be called out. They expect you to go along with it. They expect you to excuse them, to justify their actions, to twist yourself into knots, trying to make sense of the things they do. And they're good at making you believe that's your job, that it's your responsibility to keep the peace, to be the bigger person, to understand that this is just how they are. But the moment you stop making excuses, the moment you stop accepting behavior that crosses your boundaries, they lose the advantage. Because now they're faced with something they don't know how to handle: accountability. And accountability is a narcissist's worst nightmare. It forces them to see what they work so hard to avoid. It forces them to face the truth that they are not above consequence, that they don't get to treat people however they want and get away with it. And that's why they react so strongly. That's why they lash out, why they double down, why they try to flip the script and make you feel like you're the problem. Because if they can make you doubt yourself, they win. If they can get you to soften, to apologize, to explain why you had to set a boundary in the first place, then they know they still have control. That's why they'll call you difficult. They'll say you're overreacting. They'll act hurt, confused, as if they have no idea why you'd say such a thing, because they are counting on you backing down. They are counting on you giving in. But when you don't, when you hold your ground and refuse to engage in their games, they start to panic. Because now they're out of options. Now they have to face the reality that you are no longer someone they can manipulate. And that's when you see the truth. They were never strong to begin with. Their power was never real. It was only ever the illusion of power, a game they played to keep you small. But you're not small. You never were. And when you finally stand up and say your behavior is unacceptable, you remind them of that. You remind them and yourself of exactly who you are. There is one word that holds more power than almost any other when dealing with a narcissist. One word that they cannot stand to hear. One word that sends them spiraling, searching for a way to regain control. And that word is no. Just 2 letters, 1 syllable. But when you say it with certainty, when you say it without explanation, without apology, without hesitation, it cuts through every illusion they've built. Because a narcissist operates on the belief that they are entitled. Entitled to your time, entitled to your energy, entitled to your patience, your forgiveness, your endless attempts to make things work. They expect access to you whenever they want. They expect compliance, even when they dress it up as a request. They expect that if they push hard enough, manipulate cleverly enough, guilt trip thoroughly enough, you'll eventually give in. And for a long time, you probably did. Not because you were weak, but because that's how they trained you. They teach you little by little that saying no comes with consequences. That if you set a boundary, they will punish you for it. Maybe with silence, maybe with anger, maybe by making you feel like you're ungrateful or difficult or unlovable. They create a world where saying no doesn't feel like an option. But here's the truth. It always was. You just weren't allowed to see it. And that's why when you finally say, when you stand firm and simply say no, the ground beneath them starts to crack. Because narcissists don't just fear rejection, they fear the loss of control that comes with it. They hear no as something much bigger. They hear, I am no longer going to be manipulated. They hear, I am no longer afraid of your reaction. They hear, you do not own me, and that's the moment they realize they've lost their grip on you. A narcissist relies on the idea that they can wear you down, that if they just keep pushing, you'll eventually cave. And they don't just push in big ways, they push in 1,000 small ways. Testing, waiting, seeing how much they can get away with. Can you do this for me? They ask, making it sound like a small favor. And maybe it is at first, but then it becomes an expectation, then it becomes an obligation, then before you know it, they are demanding more and more, and you are giving because it feels easier to give than to deal with the storm that comes when you don't. But when you stop, when you break the cycle and say no, they don't know what to do with that. They will try to make you explain, to justify, to soften it. They will press and prod, looking for a weak spot, looking for a way back in, because they cannot accept that you, a person they once controlled, now hold the power. And here's the trick. The power of no isn't just in saying it, it's in leaving it there. No is a full sentence. You don't need to explain, you don't need to defend it, you don't need to soften the blow so they don't get upset. That's the part that unnerves them the most. Not just the word itself, but the fact that you mean it. A narcissist survives on the idea that they can get you to react, that they can pull you into an argument, into an emotional spiral, into a back and forth where they can twist your words and make you doubt yourself. But when you say no and leave it there, when you refuse to play along, they are left scrambling. They throw accusations, they bring up the past, they tell you that you're selfish, that you're cold, that you're not who they thought you were, because they need to make you feel guilty. They need to make you second guess yourself, but you don't have to, because the moment you realize you don't owe them an explanation, the moment you realize you have the right to say no, is the moment you take back everything they ever tried to take from you. And once you do that, you are free. Narcissists build their entire existence on control. Control over how others see them, control over the emotions in the room, control over the way the story unfolds. But beneath all of that, there is something even deeper, something they work tirelessly to keep hidden. Because for all their arrogance, for all their bluster and bravado, there is one thing a narcissist cannot handle: the truth. Not just any truth, the truth about who they really are. The truth that strips away the carefully crafted image. The truth that exposes the manipulation, the deception, the fear that lurks beneath their need for power. And when you look at them and say, I see exactly who you are, you take away their biggest weapon illusion. A narcissist thrives in the space between reality and perception. They are masterful at creating a version of themselves that looks just close enough to the truth that you question your instincts. They shapeshift, adjusting their personality depending on what they need in the moment. If they need to be charming, they will be charming. If they need to be vulnerable, they will put on a show of vulnerability. If they need to be the hero, they will craft a narrative where they are the only one who ever truly cared, the only one who ever sacrificed. And they do it so well that for a while you believe it, you want to believe it, because the alternative, that they are not who they pretend to be, is almost too painful to accept. But once you see it, you can't unsee it, and that terrifies them. Because once you recognize the pattern, once you recognize the way they twist and manipulate and distort, they lose control over you. And narcissists do not know who they are without control. That's why they react so violently when they feel exposed. That's why they lash out, why they scramble to discredit you, why they work overtime to convince you that you're wrong, that you're crazy, that you're the one twisting the truth. Because if they can't convince you, they have to face the one thing they fear most themselves. And that's why this moment, this quiet, unwavering moment, where you look at them and say, I see exactly who you are, is so powerful. It's not an attack, it's not a fight, it's not an attempt to change them or force them to admit the truth. It's simply an acknowledgement, a statement of clarity. And there is nothing more dangerous to a narcissist than clarity. Because here's the thing, a narcissist can argue with accusations, they can deny, deflect, project, they can spin a new story, turn the blame back on you, make you question everything you thought you knew. But when you speak the truth, not in anger, not in desperation, but in certainty, they have nowhere to go. They feel it like a crack in the foundation, a weakness in the armor they've spent their entire life reinforcing. And that is the one thing they cannot tolerate. So they will react, they will rage, they will retreat, they will try every tactic they know to pull you back into the fog. They will test you, watching closely to see if you waver, if you doubt yourself, if you can be convinced to go back to the version of reality they need you to believe. Because if they can't control your perception of them, then they have to face the possibility that they are not, in fact, the powerful, untouchable, larger-than-life figure they have always claimed to be. But here's where the real shift happens. When you say, I see exactly who you are, it's not really about them. It's about you. It's about standing in your truth, trusting what you know, no longer needing their validation or approval to make sense of your own reality. Because once you reach this point, once you truly see them for what they are, they lose all power over you. They become small, predictable, almost pitiful. And that's the moment they realize they've lost.